Good evening, Chicago. Jimmy here. I hope everybody's having a great week and staying safe. We're going to mix it up tonight. We're going to talk about a couple Chicago mob bosses and some of their friends. Now, some of their friends obviously are powerful gangsters like themselves, but others are businessmen, guys they socialite and do business with. We're also going to talk about some of the perks and benefits that come along with being a made guy or an associate of the Chicago outfit. And don't ever forget, an associate can be just as powerful, just as dangerous as any made guy out there. Some of the perks would be bags of cash, right? Unlimited amounts of stolen jewelry, diamonds, gold, city jobs, state jobs, county jobs, no-show jobs, get out of jail free cards, political favors. All these sound great, right? I would love to have a fucking no-show job and make my money on the side. But when you're flying that close to the sun for that long, you're going to get burned. Look what happened to one of the largest bookies in the country, Hal Smith. This guy was making millions. Got out of line. They found him in the trunk of his car with his throat slit from ear to ear. Or you got trucking executive Michael Cagnoni. His Mercedes-Benz and him got blown to smithereens on 294 Expressway. When the FBI investigators showed up at the scene, Michael Cagnoni's body parts were splattered all over the ramp leading to the highway. Or the flip side, you end up in a can in jail for the rest of your life. Like look at Jimmy Marcello, locked up in an ADX Supermax prison. Probably will never see the light of day. Or you got heavyweight Frank Calabrese, outfit enforcer, killer, died in a prison cell on his birthday, Christmas Day. One thing I learned about all the trials that I went to, most of the real outfit guys and associates end up dead or in jail. But before we do tonight's story, I have to bring it up one more time. I have to address the crisis here in Chicago. It's gotten worse. It's gotten out of hand since last time we spoke. And I heard now that we're having the Democrat National Convention here in Chicago coming up, which is a really big deal, we're going to get even more migrants are going to be getting dropped off at landing zones in Chicago deliberately just to embarrass our mayor, Joe Biden, and that fat fuck Pritzker, our governor. Now, everywhere I go, I see migrants. Dunkin' Donuts, Home Depot, restaurants, cafes, bars, every street corner. You see these people in herds at some of the hotels downtown Chicago. Some of them are demanding to get in. Some of them are refusing to leave. The police do absolutely nothing. You see them out there, women, children, babies, men, boys, kids, selling candy with their little signs. They can't speak a word of English. I can't help them. Most of them are harmless, but some of them are dangerous. Some of them are gangbangers and terrorists. They robbed North Riverside Mall, Orland Park Mall, and Oakbrook Mall, which is just the beginning. They attacked and stomped 2 New York police officers right there in Times Square. And it's just a matter of time where things are going to get worse. Years ago, I was very fortunate to go to the Democrat National Convention in the early 1990s. I crashed some of the biggest VIP parties. John F. Kennedy Jr. threw a party for his magazine George at the Art Institute on Michigan Avenue. I crashed that party. The next night, I snuck in the party at Planet Hollywood. That was held by Alec and Billy Baldwin. Now you can just imagine the celebrities, VIPs, professional athletes, delegates, politicians that were at these parties. Complimentary food, complimentary drinks. And it was awesome to see all these big shots and VIPs living it up in Chicago, whining and dining like kings. And I overheard them and met a few of them, and they were just really impressed with how what a great city Chicago was. Mayor Daley cleaned up the city, painted all the bridges red, white, and blue. He had it on lockdown. So it was a great event, right? So now fast forward to the Democratic National Convention coming up in 2024. And this is when you're going to get a fucking cesspool of migrants, immigrants, and illegals. Total embarrassment to our president, our governor, and our mayor. Hopefully Chicago police will have things under control. And I'm not even talking about all the newest threats by ISIS. But please say a prayer for the city of Chicago and our country, and hopefully we can get through this. But enough about these migrants. I'm starting to get pissed off. I don't want to talk about them anymore. Let's drop the story. Here we go. Boss of all bosses, a legend in the Chicago outfit. You got JB, Joe Batters, Tony Accardo. This man needs no introduction. He goes back to the old Al Capone gangs during Prohibition. He was one of Al Capone's main bodyguards, rose through the ranks of the Chicago outfit, and made millions of dollars. This man was respected and feared by all the major mob families in New York, Philly, Canada, even the Zips in Italy. All feared and respected Tony Accardo. This man kept a very low profile and never spent one night in jail. We're going to talk about some of his friends. Now here's boss of the Milwaukee mob, Frank Ballesteri. Him and Accardo go back to the Prohibition days and made millions of dollars just in bootlegging alone. They knew each other for over 40 years. He had pretty much partners with Chicago outfit boss Milwaukee Phil. Did some time in prison, never flipped, never cooperated, but he fucked up. He ordered the killing of a Chicago outfit associate, a guy called Izzo, who owned a couple restaurants and nightclubs. But he didn't get permission from the outfit. That was an unsanctioned hit. It was also a good friend of Tony Accardo's. Accardo was fucking livid. It ruined their friendship because Accardo knew he couldn't trust him. But in Frank's defense, I don't think he knew that Izzo had any affiliation with the outfit or Tony Accardo, but who knows? But it got so bad where they had to sit down. And if it wasn't for Tony Accardo being more of a gentleman than a monster, and the fact that he was good friends with this guy for 40 years, plus the Kansas City bosses had major influence, and Tony Accardo decided to give this man a pass. But if it wasn't for Kansas City, Tony Accardo would have had Frank Ballesteri killed for killing a Chicago outfit associate without permission. And as I mentioned before, Chicago outfit didn't just cover the city of Chicago's surrounding suburbs. They controlled everything in the Midwest, west of the Mississippi, throughout Vegas, Arizona, to Hollywood, California, with the exception of the Detroit family in Kansas City. But the Chicago outfit made more money than U.S. Steel, according to prosecutors. Now, here's another close friend of Tony Accardo, Dominic Senese. This guy was also good friends with Jimmy Cozzo. Jimmy Cozzo took over the Grand Avenue crew when Lumpy went to prison. Jimmy Cozzo was a big-time union guy. Dominic Senese was a big-time union guy as well. I think it was Union 703. It was the produce union. He was also good friends with Joey Lombardo, Jack Cerrone, Joey Aiuppa, and several others. Tony Accardo placed him and others as leaders, presidents of certain unions I mean, his salary back then, just salary alone, not counting how much he was skimming, was I think like $160,000 a year. But because of Accardo placed a lot of the heads of unions. He gave them those jobs. Same with a lot of the police brass as well. But this guy made a fortune in the produce business, and a lot of Chicago outfit guys were smart enough. They had vision to invest in the produce business, and they made millions of dollars legitimately. Guys like Caputo, Nitti, Battaglia. Just imagine Chicago, third largest city in the country, right here in the Midwest, in the middle of the country. We had all the produce, all the meat packing plants, plus the stockyards. Probably has to be the largest produce distribution meat packing plant in the country, maybe second in New York. So you can imagine the amount of money that there was there for the outfits taking, whether it was legitimately or illegitimately. Now here's a guy I have to show, Sam Carlisi, underboss, boss of Chicago outfit. He had a lot of beef with Dominic Senese. They didn't get along. I don't remember what the beef was, but some people think that it was Carlisi that gave the green light to kill Dominic Senese. But this is a photo they showed up in evidence at the Family Secrets trial. According to Nick Calabrese, the boss himself was there in the basement when the Spilotros got killed. When Nick got to the house early that day, first man that greeted him was Sam Carlisi. He shook Nick's hand, and he started making some wisecracks about Nick's tan and all the money that they were spending on the original hit plan in Nevada. Nick got a little nervous. Theckerata was so nervous, he beelined it right to the bathroom. Next to him, you got Jimmy Marcello, the little bald guy. He was Carlisi's right-hand man, kind of like his underboss. According to Nick Calabrese, Jimmy Marcello picked up Nick, John Theckerata, and Jimmy LaPetria at a Venture store parking lot in a real fancy minivan, and he dropped the three of the killers off at the house in Bensenville. Then, according to Nick, little Jimmy went back, picked up Michael Spilotro and Tony Spilotro, and delivered them to the house in Bensenville. And we all know what happened to the Spilotro brothers when they walked down those basement stairs. They were brutally beat, stomped, and killed. But according to Nick Calabrese, it was Jimmy Marcello that set up the Spilotros because he was good friends with Michael Spilotro and he trusted him. Next there, the guy with the hat and the pinstripe shirt, you got Louis the Mooch Ebele. According to Nick Calabrese, he was one of the men that threw a rope around Michael Spilotro and strangled him. Nick dove for his legs, tackled him. Louis the Mooch strangled him from behind. According to Nick, Michael Spilotro didn't put up much of a fight. He kind of died easily, but a .22 caliber gun fell out of Michael's pants. John No-Nose DeFranzo picked it up, unloaded it, and then No-Nose wiped off a smudge of blood on the wall. But the government showed this photo because these three men right here, all heavyweights, made members of Chicago outfit, were meeting Joe Ferriola and Rocky and Felice at a McDonald's parking lot in Oak Brook. And this particular McDonald's I've been to several times, but I had no idea that this was the planning of part 2, plan B of the Spilotros killing. The government alleged that this was the meeting a couple days or couple weeks before the Spilotros got killed. Another enemy Dominic Senese had, similar to Carlisi, was Joe Ferriola. Joe Ferriola had a lot of issues. He didn't like the way Dominic Senese was running that particular union. That could have been motive for the killing, that Joe Ferriola and Sam Carlisi had him killed. But I'm not sure because Dominic Senese was killed in Oak Brook, right where Iupa and Joe Iupa lived. I'm not sure if they would want to shit where they eat, if you know what I mean. But with these outfit guys, you never know. But again, according to Nick Calabrese, even outfit boss Joe Ferriola took part in the brutal beatdown of Michael and Tony Spilotro. Afterwards, they all went out to diner for coffee. Nick Calabrese said that they all had gloves on, and Joe Ferriola told Feccarata and Nicky Calabrese to cut up their gloves into tiny pieces. Now, here's just one of many mansions in Oak Brook, Illinois. It's a very wealthy suburb west of Chicago, maybe 30, 45 minutes away. Joey Aiuppa, boss of Chicago Alpha, used to live here. And years ago, when he got out from prison, first thing he did was he raised the Italian flag, and then he raised the American flag, planting his flag. Then you got Joe Ferriola, another boss of Chicago outfit, had a mansion here, as well as one of the most recent bosses, Joe the Builder, Joe Andriecki. But I bring up this photo because this is where Dominic Senese was killed. He pulled up to his gate. He lived in the gated community. It was either one or two masked gunmen got out, fired a couple shots with a shotgun, blasted Senese. One shot got him in the face. The second shot got him in the neck. He didn't know what hit him. It was pitch black out. He never cooperated. Today, this is still one of many unsolved attempts of murder. Who do you guys think gave the order? Who do you think the trigger man was? And what do you think the motive is in the attempt assassination of Dominic Senese? This guy's very lucky that he lived to tell about it. He had to have multiple surgeries, plastic surgery, etc. And several years later, he ended up passing away. But he did survive the hit. Dominic Senese, close friend of Tony Accardo. I don't think Tony Accardo ever retaliated. Some people think that he had problems in the union, that it could have been somebody from the produce union that actually killed him, or tried to kill him. I'm sorry. But this is Dominic Senese, good friend of Tony Accardo, assassination attempt, unsolved to this day. There's the meatpacking district right there on Lake and Halstead. Here's the photo of the meeting before they killed the Spilotro brothers. There's Joe Ferriola. This guy would have been a great leader. Unfortunately, he died of natural causes. And when Harry Allman came home from prison, Ferriola gave him $200,000 to put on the street to start his loan shark business. Here's all the mansions we talked about. Here we go. This is what I'm looking for. Here's another friend, very close friend of Tony Accardo, Harry Levinston. This guy was a big-time jeweler in Chicago. He had a jewelry store on Wabash Avenue, what we call Jewelers Row. Now, years ago, some burglars, after carefully casing his jewelry store and planning, they broke into Harry Levinston's jewelry store right there on Wabash Avenue, and they stole several very valuable precious gems and got away with the score. As I mentioned before, in the Grand Avenue neighborhood, in the Bridgeport crew, 26th Street crew, you had some of the best burglars, thieves in the entire country. What the burglars did not know was that Harry was close friends with Tony Accardo, boss, or at this time was kind of retired consigliere of the Chicago outfit, one of the most powerful men in the country. Harry sat down with Tony, told him his jewelry store was robbed and some very precious gems were stolen. Accardo said he would look into it. He made a few phone calls, and with just a matter of days, he found out which burglary crew was responsible and capable of pulling off a heist like that. Accardo demanded that the stolen merchandise and gems be returned. Everything was returned. Fast forward, we all know what happened. Tony Accardo is at his home in Palm Springs, California, chilling. He gets a call from his houseman saying his house in River Forest was robbed. The burglars broke into Tony Accardo's house, Boston Chicago outfit, one of the most powerful, dangerous men in the world, to retake the gems that they stole from Harry Levinston. How crazy, how absurd, how ballsy is this? You can imagine how upset Tony Accardo was. He was fucking livid. Sure enough, 5, 6, 7, 8 burglars, one from every race, started to disappear. The houseman that looked over Tony Accardo's house, who made the call telling them the house was broken into, he disappeared. The contractor who built the house, he disappeared. Sure enough, a couple months later, all the burglars that participated in the heist at Accardo's house, and even burglars that had nothing to do with it, were all rounded up, brutally stabbed up and tortured and killed, sending a message not to rob a mob boss's house. But this was an unbelievable part of the Chicago Outfit's history. They talked about each one of those burglars that were brutally tortured and killed at the family secrets trial. They were some of the 14 unsolved murders dating back to the 1970s. But again, Harry Levinston, top businessman, jeweler in Chicago, good friends with Tony Accardo. Rather than go to the police or the FBI, he goes to Tony Accardo, not only to get his jewels back, but to get revenge. That's a powerful story. Now, the only thing is, obviously, it brought a lot of heat. The last thing Tony Accardo wanted. And then two of the alleged hitmen, Dinger, which was Iupa's guy, and Tony Borsellino, who was a very well-liked part of the Wild Bunch crew. Those guys allegedly took place in some of the torturing and killing of these guys, as well as Nick Calabrese and the 26th Street crew. But eventually, Tony Borsellino was shot and killed by somebody he knew and trusted. Same with Dinger. So some people think that was Accardo's way of tying up all loose ends. Now here's another good friend of Tony Accardo, very similar to Dominic Senese. This guy was a union guy as well, and boss of the Chicago Heights crew. You could see him in the famous Last Supper photo. Joey Lombardo denied even knowing this man. But one day he was golfing, and some lunatic who was hiding behind a tree came out of the tree, fired off a couple shots, hit El Palato, but never killed him. This was an unsanctioned hit on a mob boss. So Nicky Calabrese testified that heavyweight in the Chicago Heights crew, Chicago Outfit associate Nicholas DeAndrea, Jimmy Marcello, Sam Carlisi, Jimmy Turk Torello, and a few other guys I'm forgetting, grabbed him, got a hold of him. And Nick Calabrese and Jimmy Marcello, when they were locked up together in Milan, Michigan, they were reminiscent about his murder and how fucking strong he was, how hard he was to cuff and to get down. But eventually they got him down. He was jumped. He was outnumbered. The other guy he was with, I think, was killed as well or tried to get away. But once they got him in the back of the car, Carlisi, Sam Carlisi, boss of Chicago Outfit, kept repeatedly cracking him in the head with the gun. Nick Calabrese testified that Carlisi accidentally killed him. They were trying to get information on the El Palato assassination attempt, but Nicholas DeAndre never talked, never said anything. But it was Carlisi that repeatedly kept cracking him in the head, trying to get him to talk. Now here's a guy, old Harold Beanstein. This is the original founder of Vinnie's. Now he goes back to, let's say, 1945, 1948. Started out with one small mom and pop grocery store. Now turned it into a fortune, millions of dollars. Now they have over, I think, 48, 50 Vinnie liquor stores. I mean, look at the size of the store. all over the city of Chicago and surrounding suburbs. But I bring up Benny, Harold Beenstein, Benny, we'll call him, because he was good friends with Chicago outfit heavyweight Gus Alex. He testified at the Gus Alex trial. The old man got up there and said that it was Gus Alex that gave him his start, gave him his first job at some of Gus Alex's restaurants. Gus Alex gave him a loan. He opened up his first liquor store and then turned it into a multi-million-dollar franchise. He also said, and I loved it, that every now and then when Gus Alex would visit him at one of his liquor stores downtown, they would go in the back room and they would have some of the finest liquor, some of the most precious, expensive, top shelf liquor that's not even sold to the public. They would go in the back, smoke a nice cigar, and have a drink. Ron Safer and Chris Gere, the prosecutors who prosecuted Gus Alex, basically were trying to accuse Harold Beenstein of receiving a juice loan from Gus Alex, where he had to pay outrageous street tax, and if he didn't have to pay, that he would be another victim of an extortion crew or a street loan crew. But Mr. Binion denied it. He said that he was best friends with Gus Alex and that Gus Alex gave him the start in the liquor business. I'll never forget, though, at the Gus Alex trial, he underestimated the prosecution. He thought no jury in the world would be a low-life career Jewish gangster like Lenny Patrick. Lenny Patrick killed 6 to 12 people, robbed over 100 banks, was the prime suspect in the President Kennedy assassination, didn't even care that the mob blew up his daughter's car and front porch, the worst of the worst. But he wore a wire. He testified against Gus Alex. Unfortunately, the jury believed Lenny Patrick that Gus Alex was receiving kickbacks from a very violent extortion crew. But here's Shotzi, one of Gus Alex's girlfriends. I remember when the verdict was read, Gus Alex was downly shocked, but he was almost had a heart attack when the prosecution agreed with the judge agreed with the prosecutor that he was a flight risk. They revoked his bond and took him into custody immediately. He was not expecting that. He started crying a little bit. He pulled out the hanky, wiped his eye. Then he pulled out a big wad of wife and handed it to his model girlfriend. But Gus Alex, a class act. This guy was your major political fixer. He had strong influence and power with a lot of judges, aldermen, policemen, congressmen, senatormen, even the vice president of the United States, Spiro Agnew. Gus Alex also controlled all the mob's money in the Swiss bank accounts. But unfortunately, he was convicted and sent to jail based on the government's star witness, complete scumbag, lowlife Lenny Patrick. But again, Gus Alex, good friends with Benny, gave him his start. Now they own 48 to 50 liquor stores throughout the city of Chicago. Now here's another guy I never even heard of prior to the Family Secrets trial. You got Joe Shorty LaMattia, born and raised in Bridgeport. He was pretty much at Angelo Petria's beck and call 24/7. Not sure why he was never made. He was talked about quite a bit at the Family Secrets trial. Now here's his son, Rocky LaMattia. I actually met Rocky at Kozo's Pool Hall, probably early 2000s. Fast forward, I sat next to him every day at the Family Secrets trial until he got kicked out. He wouldn't shut his mouth. You got to behave yourself in court, especially in a federal courtroom. He actually got caught trying to smuggle contraband to Frank Calabrese. He tried to smuggle him some prosciutto and some Italian salami. And the federal marshal caught the play, kicked Rocky out. But this guy's quite a character. Now, I didn't know what Rocky was up to until I found out many years later. But Rocky, we'll call him a Chicago outfit associate, maybe even a wannabe because of his father. But he accidentally killed his girlfriend, a neighborhood girl in Bridgeport. And because of his father's connections through the First Ward, men like Pat Marcy, Alderman Fred Rohde, John DiArco, guys that run the city. Obviously, you got the Caruso family and the infamous boss of the 26th Street crew, Angela Petra. Because of that tight Bridgeport crew and First Ward relationship, they bribed the judge $10,000. Rocky LaMattia was found not guilty of killing his girlfriend in a bench trial. That was a tragic to this girl and her family, and nobody was ever charged for that murder. Because of Rocky's father's influence in the First Ward, he actually beat a murder rep. Now that's power, but it's very sad. Hopefully this girl and Rocky are all resting in heaven. That's a tragic story. I did a story about this prior if you wanted to check it out. But the only reason I'm telling this story is, again, the connections Rocky's father had with the guys in the First Ward. Back then, you could beat a DUI, a drug pinch, a parking ticket, even a murder for the right amount of money. Now, here's one of the most corrupt Cook County judges ever. You got corrupt, disgraced judge Frank Wilson. And going back to one of the first trials I ever started to follow, I didn't go to it, but I followed it, were the Greylord trials. That's where all the Cook County judges got indicted for bribing, extortion, racketeering, you name it. But we had here in Chicago and Cook County, we had the most corrupt judges in the history of the United States. That's a fact. You could fact check that, do your research. So it's very easy for the outfit to bribe these guys. And Harry Allman, leader of the Wild Bunch crew, nephew of Joe Ferriola, alleged enforcer, loan shark, hitman, did some heavy work for the mob. He killed a union guy, Bill Logan. In the first trial, through that corrupt lawyer piece of shit Bob Cooley, who was the bagman, they bribed this judge, Fred Wilson. He found Harry Allman not guilty of killing Bill Logan. And there was witnesses that witnessed the murder. Fast forward, when they found out the case was fixed, they threw out the law double jeopardy. That was the first time they ever did that. And they tried Harry Allman a second time of killing Bill Logan. I seen Bob Cooley testify in that trial. And unfortunately for Harry Allman, he was found guilty. But I'll never forget seeing how much he aged, being locked up so many years, seeing his wife and kids were there crying in court. They were blowing each other kisses. But imagine being 10 feet, 15 feet away from an outfit heavyweight like Harry Allman. And then years later, Harry Allman passed away. I ended up going to his wake. A friend of mine wanted me to go. I felt a little uncomfortable there, but I said a prayer for Harry, his family, and some of Harry's victims. But this is a class act here, all stand-up guys. None of these guys ever even thought of cooperating. You got Harry Allman there in the front. Behind him, Big Mikey Sarno. Then you got Gabit, Bobby Bellavia. Then behind him, you got Rocky and Felice. And then you got Sally De Laurentiis. Sally De Laurentiis is still alive. Bobby Gabit is still alive. Mike Sarno is still alive, trying to get out of prison on compassionate release. But Harry Allman, with his connections in the First Ward, was able to bribe this low-life judge here to beat a murder rep for $10,000. So for $10,000, if you had connections with the Chicago outfit in the powerful First Ward, you could beat a murder rep. How sick is that? Now, during the trial, the prosecution was putting on a really strong case against Harry. Like I said, they had eyewitnesses. One guy in his crew, this lowlife, Louis Almeida, even testified against him. He was the getaway guy. They kind of had Harry, right? He was getting nervous. He didn't think he could find Harry not guilty. He mentioned to Bob Cooley he had a reputation. Maybe he wanted more money. Cooley went back to the guys at the First Ward, told them the judge was getting cold feet. Fred Rohde, Alderman Fred Rohde, Angela Petria told him, you agreed to do it for this amount. You're not getting one dime less. And if you don't have, and if the judge doesn't do it, he's going to have a problem. Meaning they'll kill the fucking judge. So the judge did the right thing as far as the outfit guys go, found Harry Alleman not guilty. Everybody in the courtroom was shocked except for Harry Alleman and the lowlife corrupt lawyer Bob Cooley. A couple years later, this lowlife couldn't live with himself, and he shot and killed himself. That's corrupt Judge Frank Wilson, one of many. But that's just a few stories for you guys tonight. Please let me know about Senese, though. I want to know who were the shooters, who gave the order. Was it Carlisi? Was it Joe Ferriola? Or was it some guys in the union? Let me know what you guys think. If you like my Chicago mob trial stories, hit the like button, subscribe, share with your friends. I appreciate all your comments. Stay safe out there. I'm going to do a live soon. Just got to figure out how to work this software. Ciao.